All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to, is this episode 3, I think, of Weekend Radio, the show that does not exist. I'm joined today by Ben with TFB TV. Of course, as you know, our normal host, Barroom and Narc. All right. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Um, Ben, I sort of want to start off by going into SHOT Show, which just wrapped up, I think, last week.
Yep.
Um,
So the last day was Friday.
All right. So, okay. So this is a weird one, I thought, because normally at least the past couple of years, I looked at SHOT Show and it was like, all right, this is shit. This isn't going anywhere. This is also shit, and it's not going anywhere. But there was a couple interesting things. I thought Zastava especially really kind of killed it. But why don't you take it away since you were actually there?
Sure. So you'll have to excuse me if I'm a little quiet or if I take a break to cough. Um, I got the traditional mystery shot show flu. Don't know what I got. Tested negative for COVID. But I got something. It happens every year. Um, excuse me. So this year at Shot Show, we saw a lot of pistol caliber carbines this year. Honestly, was like the big thing, which personally I don't care for. Like PCCs in general do nothing for me. I just don't see the value of them. Like to me, they're an okay way to waste money at a range. You know, they're moderately fun, but with the price of 9mm, it's just as cheap to shoot 223 right now, and it's a lot more fun. So, given the choice, I'd rather take my, AR or something, or my AK out to the range and blast away with that. But anyways, that's not important. This year, a lot of PCCs. We saw the weirdest fucking PCC from CAA, the guys who make the MCC chassis. They came out with the Agada, that's Agadah, or just Agada PCC. It is the weirdest thing. The guy who designed it basically decided that the ergonomics of any current rifle are wrong and need to be fixed. So the pistol grip is off to the side. I found a picture, and the foregrip is off to the side. So when you hold it, you're in like a boxing stance.
I don't
You know,
know
it
if
looks
that's
like a California
hideous.
compliant.
Yeah, I don't know if that's hideous or like space rifle or maybe both.
No, it's
It
fucking ugly, dude.
it's the weirdest thing I saw at Shot, and you see weird shit at Shot. Like that's just what you do is you see weird shit. This is the weirdest thing. Um, the stock is fully adjustable. I think it folds to either side. Um, or no, excuse me. It folds to whichever side your pistol grip is on, or away from your pistol grip rather, because it only comes in two configurations, lefty or righty.
Holy shit.
So
Yeah.
it's not reversible at all.
Fuck. Yeah.
Did they give you a price on this thing? I bet it's like
Uh, they
$1 trillion.
did, but let me see if I can find it. That's a good question.
Yo, am I the only one sitting at their desk like a retard trying to figure out how you're supposed to hold it?
Yeah, no, I am too. I don't quite.
So
Shit, I don't.
so MSRP is going to be 900,
What? Not,
and
that
it
is
takes
not what I expected. I would have
so
said like $3,000 because it's some revolutionary quote unquote bullshit.
so in terms of holding it, so like bring up your fists in a boxing stance, like one hand near your jaw, one hand extended, right? That's how you hold it.
Fuck that.
So, like, but if I'm right-handed, I'm like in a southpaw stance.
No, if you're right-handed, you're in a right-handed stance. If you're left-handed, you're in a left-handed stance.
Wow.
It comes in left-handed or right-handed configuration. So
Okay.
if you're a lefty, you can't use the righty rifle unless you're willing to take your right hand and put it up near your cheek and
I'm
use
almost
that as your
kind of,
trigger hand.
I'm almost kind of picturing this like holding a Sten, but like a little bit broken with the the grip on the side. Okay, so
Yeah.
first thing, I did not expect that to be $900. I would have thought this is like some guy high on his own smell, and
No,
this
this
would have been like
is. I mean, this is CAA. You know, they make the MCC, the like the not. I don't know if it's the original, but it's one of the better Glock, not a stock chassis.
running. Yeah,
Yeah.
hot
Uh,
damn.
so like
Anything
they're
that's
not.
that's standing
Um,
on, I'm not gonna like. It's so awkward over long periods.
I'm with Mark.
it,
I don't like this at all.
so if you want to see something even weirder, if you look in this picture, you can see it's got a kickstand.
What in the cinnamon toast?
That looks
crunch?
like a nutsack. What the
That's the
Actually,
foregrip.
was.
That's the foregrip is the nutsack, and on the other side is a little kickstand, so it'll actually stand up when you put it down.
Oh my god,
It
it's
looks
got like
like
one of the
somebody-
Chinese bipod flashlight things.
It looks like somebody took truck nuts and grinded them down and then fucking put it on a quad rail. Like, it's
So
terrible.
I will say it's weird to hold, but after like a minute, it feels kind of comfortable. Holding a lot of the planes of your body. If any of you guys have ever done like BJJ or any of the martial arts that work with stacking your body, right? That's a term that gets used a lot. You guys familiar with what I'm talking about?
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm familiar
yeah.
with what you're
he
talking
talks
about.
about that as well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so when you think about it, holding a rifle, you're breaking all of the planes of your body. Like all of your joints are broken. Like, but when you use this, your wrist and your forearm are in line instead of being like bent in order to grab an underslung pistol grip. And your forearm is in a much more natural position to support the rifle. I mean, that's one of the reasons that the C clamp came about, is because it. Jesus Christ. I'm dying. Help.
I want your guns now.
Fuck you. You can't have my guns.
It's gonna get
So the one of the reasons the C clamp came about is because holding a normal pistol grip or a normal foregrip is not comfortable, and it's not practical. It doesn't help as much with recoil. This side grip is much more comfortable, much more natural. It looks stupid. All right, it looks really fucking stupid, but it actually doesn't feel terrible. The main downside to this rifle is that you can't switch sides with it. So like if it's in lefty configuration, that's the only way it can be shot. Like you can't switch shoulders with it.
You know what I think? I think this is like the electronic cigarette of the gun world, and here's what I mean by this. It's probably objectively better, but it ruins the one good thing about cigarettes and guns. You know, you look really cool doing it, and there's no way to look cool shooting this thing.
What about that?
Yeah.
I just wonder what it does for accuracy. I mean, ergonomically, you have a pretty convincing argument there, but I just like does that immediately translate to effective accuracy? And what about
yeah.
like weapon transitioning or anything like that? You can't shoot it from offhand or other side. Like everything that I know about shooting and fighting is saying no.
Also,
Yeah.
I don't like the mag is like angled back toward your face, which just like
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been practicing mag changes
Oh no,
since I was
that's
12 years old.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not the mag. That's a mag holder
Oh,
in the
okay.
pistol grip. So
Okay,
if you look at the second photo, you see the cutout in the side of the frame there. That's the
wow.
actual magwell.
Okay, all right. That's not as bad.
So it's a much more traditional magwell, and it
Yeah.
doesn't require reaching under the gun with your firing hand to use. Like the idea is obviously you're going to take off your support hand and load using your support hand.
This is a reciprocating charging handle.
I believe they said non-reciprocating, but I could be
okay.
wrong.
Do you
But
think
I could be wrong.
Do you think the I don't know if it's like a market decision or just general the reason for the prevalence for the PCCs this year has anything to do with the sort of proliferation of PCCs being 3D printed, and that it's much more available for individuals, and so this is the market trying to sort of cater to that and sort of try to take a piece of that.
I don't think so. I don't think it has anything to do with 3D printing, to be honest with you, because it's still such a niche thing.
Yeah.
Like the number of gun people who 3D print is still a very, very small number. Which if you guys don't whoever's listening to this, if you don't 3D print your guns, you're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Narc, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that. And I wouldn't.
Well, I was
I'd
just
agree.
thinking about like the melee conflict and things like that. Where you have now the like that's their primary weapon. This is a 3D printed PCC, and I just strongly suspect you're going to see more and more of that as time passes.
My thoughts on that are that, see, that's a good point. I think in terms of PCCs of the future, maybe these guys are like on to something and they're thinking like 5-10 years ahead. Well, I think the current PCCs are because I see, this is the thing. I don't quite get about PCCs right now, which is that you can get, so what shorty rifles really had over PCCs is pretty much everything at this point. Like if
Yeah.
you wanted to get just like a short 5.56 AR, same ish size as a PCC, you can probably do so for cheaper, get better ballistics overall, and still have spend less on ammo. In the past, it would have been 9mm cheaper. But now, what's kind of confusing me is that there are all these PCCs coming out, which are like 2 or 3 grand. And I know they're nice, but at the same time, I feel like the advantage right now of a PCC is hopefully will be again being cheap to shoot, and people are kind of missing that mark.
Yeah.
Because I don't, if anything in the PCC world that crosses like 1500 ish, right? At that point, you're into MP5 on a sale territory, which is going to blow whatever you have out of the water, and then also the MPX, and even like in some cases, even now the Strybogs, which have had the fixes done to them, the curved mags and whatnot. So I looked at a bunch of, admittedly, some TFB videos, and it was like, oh, it looks great. It's really cool. It uses an AR trigger pack. You could drop in a FRT trigger, which I guess we'll get into. But and like, okay, great. This thing could be cool. It uses AR pattern. It's like an AR9, but a little nicer. How nice is it? Oh, it's like, or how much is it? Like, oh, 3 grand. Yeah, no thanks. I can go buy a Scar.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
I mean,
That's
this
why I would
goes
like
back
want
to-
the GMH9 or whatever, or a Scorpion even, just because like the MSRP on the MP5 and on the MPX just got increased to over 3,000. So fuck HK and fuck Sig, but like it's ridiculous. And I would attribute it to like the fact that we have so many new gun owners in the United States. And what do you see at gun shops all the time? Whenever you see a new gun owner, they're never told to buy a rifle caliber. They're always told to buy a pistol caliber. And if it's a woman, they get told to buy a 380.
Yeah.
That's a good
In
point.
fairness, they're getting told that because they're getting told to buy a handgun first. Because they're not coming into the shop and saying, hey, so, I'm a very experienced shooter and I have plenty of training under my belt, and I'm looking for something that I'm going to be able to use to defend my home as well as reach out and touch somebody at 400 yards because I am concerned about the direction our country is going.
Exactly right. So if you already have a
Coming into the
pistol, they're
shop
going to say like, yeah, just get a rifle-barreled PCC. It'll use the same ammo and mags as the gun that you already have, and then that's
Yeah.
off. Away we go.
Yeah, so and the other thing, I didn't know about that price increase actually for the MP5 MPX. In that being
Yep.
the case, I would probably say right now your best bang for the buck, if you're looking for like a really good PCC, is probably a CMMG, if that has remained the same as it was. Um,
Yep.
Especially considering it uses an AR trigger pack. But yeah, a lot of missing the mark. But then I think I think and everyone can kind of see this right now. It's just that uh, people who just got into shooting, not with this most recent wave, like 2019, 2020, but a little before, like 18, 17, 16, are really starting to branch out. Um, and I think this is where now companies that are on the AK scene are starting to take it away because now people are getting sick of ARs that have been shooting them for the past, what, 5 or 6 years. Um, and so I looked at the offerings from Zastava and KUSA. There's one other I forget offhand, but I think companies right now that are going in the direction of AKs in domestically made calibers are probably going to take it away the next couple years. I know we'll still have 7.62 and whatnot domestically made. I think KUSA is going to make some. PSA is going to set up. PSA is buying the Russian tooling and just shipping it over. Um, but I think, yeah, I think this is where things are going to go. Is a lot of people are going to get not an AR, something different, VHS, an AK, a something, in 5.56, that'll be relatively cheap to shoot in the future. Um, that's my takeaway, at least at the moment. And looping back to PCCs, this is where I don't see the PCC making that much of a comeback, um, in the grand scheme of things. I think you still get sales of like a Strybog, a CMMG, a PSA, blow your face off, whatever special for $200. But um, yeah, not seeing the PCC stuff so much. Um, if you want to pitch the the ball sack special boxer rifle to like, I don't know, you could like paint this thing up
It's
rainbow and be like, oh, we're inclusive here at
You know what it would actually be
Somebody's
great
gonna do
for?
that.
People in a
Somebody's
wheelchair.
definitely do that. Yes.
No,
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like I'm actually like I'm sitting here and doing it like I've been doing for like the past 30 minutes at this point. But like it's more comfortable to hold like this goofy looking thing where you can kind of move your arms out a little wider than a regular rifle. I'm thinking just sitting in my chair right now.
so it's not uncomfortable. It's actually fairly comfortable, but it's weird, and therefore I don't like it. No, the gun industry is really slow to accept change, and if something can't immediately prove that it really is the next great thing, then it's
Yeah.
not going to take off.
I think this would go the way of caseless ammo for the same reason. Just like yeah, it's probably objectively better for a lot of reasons, but it's not that much better that everyone's going to change.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
That
I
was the
think
theme.
this is a niche thing, and
Uh,
I don't
so
see this hanging around.
and so something that I think that we've kind of not forgotten, but has become less prominent in recent years is that it's completely valid to buy a gun just because it would be fun to shoot.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just buy it because it's fun or it's cool or it's interesting. It doesn't have to be like practical. But at the same time, this is being marketed as a practical like solution. Like it's something that is supposed to be practically better. I don't think it's going to be better. I don't think it's going to be like so much objectively better. It's still a pistol caliber carbine, which is going to be inferior to any rifle, and it's not small. Like it is a bulky gun. It is a big bulky gun. Um,
Kind of like defeats the
like
purpose of a PCC.
yeah, it's going to come in a 10-inch variant, but even with the 10-inch variant, it's still going to be a big bulky gun.
Yeah, no, this is yeah. I think both of you summed up points that I thought were good, which is, long story short, people are going to have to change within just what was coming down the ammo pipeline. People are going to have to change their strategies real quick because in about a year and a half or 2 years, the ammo market's 100% going to go upside down again.
Yeah.
When the last ammo trails off from Russia. There's going to, I mean, yes, there's going to be domestic ammo, but it'll probably be at least a couple months after that. Long enough that people are going to have to switch to something else for their
Yeah.
short term. But yeah, the company Zastava, KUSA, and then anyone right now who's taking their otherwise other caliber platform and switching it up to something domestic, I think is going to have the best long term success. I know some of you didn't watch SHOT Show, but particularly the AK companies, there were a lot of offerings now of 5.56 AKs coming this year, or if they already had one, getting more. I know Arsenal, that was the one I was thinking of. Arsenal is getting another batch brought stateside within the next 6 months, I think.
Yep, something like that.
This is where, in terms of the moneymakers, I think this is it. And I mean, for as different as a boxing, I mean, I could be wrong, and everyone will be using a boxing stance for shooting in, a year and a half, but I don't think so. I think this is like, what was that a couple years ago? No, more than that. There's like something called the Extron, like electronic primer, uh, bolt action, which you could set the trigger to pretty much anything because it didn't rely on hammer ignition.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of what Varun was saying. It's like, yes, this is probably objectively better, but it's not enough. So companies right now really have to straddle that line between where's the market 100% going to go, where would I like it to go for my business sake, and then kind of find the middle road because it's going to be tough. I don't see any way, especially with the way what's going on in Russia right now, which we'll segue into here. That I don't see there's any way at all that this ammo thing is going anything but south. I even think there's a good chance they're going to say to stop the Russian import of ammo before the deadline, especially if Russia gets freaky with Ukraine. But all right, I think that's. Anyone else want to say anything about SHOT Show experiences, whatnot?
Yeah, I got a lot of cool patches.
Hell yeah.
And let's see. There's a lot of cool shit at SHOT Show. If you guys get the chance to go, I highly recommend it. Go at least once, and honestly, if you're not going there for a specific reason, you can probably stop after once because it's pretty much the same every year. Excuse me. Once you've seen a bunch of companies offer essentially the same ARs, PCCs, and with a couple of tweaks once, you've seen it every time. But there's always cool patches. The booth babes this year were lacking. I was
Oh
extremely
God, what about the sex
disappointed.
dolls? What was that about?
They
What
all
sex
have
doll?
masks on.
You didn't see that?
Who are they all wearing?
That's like
They
the one thing
may
from
or
SHOT
may
Show that I
not.
saw.
Yeah, which company, Barham? Do you remember which one that was? There was a company that instead of having like a clerk on the floor, they put up dolls at their booth for God knows what reason. I don't know if it was just to be supremely autistic or what. But that was freaking weird. That was I don't get it.
I can't find it. I searched sex dolls SHOT Show and it didn't come up with anything except for sex dolls that someone is trying to sell to me. So
It didn't come up with James Reeves? Oh,
no,
man.
it did not.
Oh man.
Oh man, I will say one last thing on SHOT Show is the interesting things. Those freaking Mormons, they're always coming out with cool guns, but like,
Oh yeah, they are.
we all just know that they're never gonna get into production.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna have the MDR for the entire time the company exists, and that's it. It's the only thing they got. It's cool enough, so it's fine. But like in terms of producing anything else, you know what? Just
Yeah.
don't count on it. But like they can put on their front door, we have the best bullpup objectively, and then just leave it at that.
Yeah, I
Well,
wanted an MDR until I
Springfield's
found out
coming
about
for him.
it.
Springfield's trying to get their VHS to take that title. I don't know if it will, but
See, the thing is, I want a VHS, right? Like, it looks cool to me because it looks like Space G36, which is already like a space rifle. But I just don't. Like I don't know this. I feel like a lot of this is going to rely on the aftermarket because I despise bullpup triggers. Um, and there's fixes right now. Like if you bought an AUG right now off the wall, you could get a metal trigger pack housing, and that would fix 95% of your issues. Like it'd be pretty close to like a mil spec AR. Not quite, but close enough. Um, but I think M Carbo is working on stuff for the VHS already, like a metal shoe for
Yeah.
the trigger. But no, I think something's got to. The real bullpup that's going to take off, as much as I would like it to be the VHS because it's cool as shit, is going to be something that gets around the trigger issue. I don't know how, even if it's like a bazooka trigger where you have it's actually an electronic hookup to like a hammer or something. Which that'd be cool as shit, actually.
Be cool as
Don't-
fuck.
I'm patenting that. Don't steal it. But no, I think I don't know. I would like to see. Oh, and also the other thing, people give the name Hellion a bunch of shit. I think it's kind of badass, actually. Yeah, it's a little cheese, but whatever. Suck it.
I'm sure they're gonna have like they've already got the Saint, the Hellion, the Hellcat. I'm sure they're gonna come out with like the Archangel or some shit next. And it's gonna be like I'm sure it's gonna be like an AR-10 in 6.5 Creedmoor, and they're gonna call it the Archangel or some shit like that.
I was gonna say they have to just to dunk on what's it called, Tapco or whoever made those stocks for SKS.
Archangel, yeah, was Tapco.
Yeah.
That went way the dodo. Yeah, no,
Fucking Tapco.
You know what? They should just play into it. Just like call the next one like devil, but with like a B, like devil. Purposely misspell it. Put flames on the side of it, like a Hot Wheels car, and then it's an AR-10, but it's a 7-inch barrel. It comes with 1 to 10 LPVO, and and then also takes proprietary magazines, but only 3 rounds.
Okay, so like I'm just looking at the Hellion advertising right now, and it's a bunch of dudes in like full kit and all tactical and shit. And I just want to like make a side point right now. I want gun companies to start advertising to me, and that's not to say that you can't have guys wearing kit, because I've got nice kit. I like my kit, but I want to see more videos of dudes just fucking mad dumping into trash, because that's what speaks to me as a consumer.
Oh, yeah.
Also, it's way more
Yeah.
likely to happen en masse than it is running around in full kit.
Oh yeah. I mean, like
Yeah,
High Point
we're-
kind of does like that, like kind of memey advertisements, which I appreciate them for that. I have a High Point.
Oh, if you're gonna actually have to use something, that's the gun to use right there, just for sheer economic value.
Yeah, so when the cops take it and they don't give it back, even though it's like a justified
Exactly.
shoot, yeah, then it's like, well, okay, you know what? And they give it to you back like 2 years later. It's like, you know what? You can just
Yeah,
keep
go ahead and heat that. By the way, I bought another 10 of them.
that. I got another 10 of them for the next 10 home invasions.
Exactly.
I wonder what a cop would say if he saw my High Point, because mine's got a tanker brake on it.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, dude. I'll post a picture so that Dog Shoot can add it for video. But yeah, I've got a fucking tanker brake on my High
yeah.
Point.
I'm putting all these in the video so people can see what we're talking about.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's just
It's
it's a
always just
flashbang with
laugh.
every.
Yeah, it actually
Fucking
is. You know,
wild.
if I miss, they don't see anything, and their ears start bleeding.
I mean, can't argue with results.
I mean, I know, just me laughing as I remember the
Oh yeah, that reminds me.
Oh.
Before we switch off a shot show, on the Russian angle, talking about what's going on. I know because I have this plan, and I know a lot of other people have this plan. Is they're waiting for KUSA or Arsenal's latest batch to kind of make their quote unquote alpha AK in 5.56 or 5.45 when they go into production this year. If you want to do like a proper alpha AK and Zenico it up, I think I would probably get the Zenico now as opposed to later. Because
Yeah.
there's a chance you're not gonna get Zenico again for quite a while, if ever. Um, Even though I think there's rumors of a stateside plant of some kind. Um, but what the time between Kalashnikov Concern and Kalashnikov USA was like 6 years. So yeah, I would if that's on your bucket list, I would do that soon rather than later. Just figure out Kalashnikov USA and your arsenals for their handguns are going to take what standard pattern probably.
Yeah.
So just get it in that, and yeah, that way later when everyone's crying, you can be like, yeah, suck it, I got my freaking the last
Yeah.
alpha AK known to man.
Cause that's what I want to do right now. I want to get a Sam 5, which is like the Bulgarian adopted rifle, and just kind of fucking kit it out.
Yeah, I want to do that with a 101 when they come out. What I think they said 120 days, somewhere between 90 and 120. Because I am a self-proclaimed KUSA fanboy. Varun knows this.
Yes.
The 103 is for, especially for a domestic AK. Whoo, damn!
I
It
was
shreds.
genuinely shocked at not even like looking at it through the lens of like a domestic AK, like because I've shot a lot of import AKs as well. It's just an objectively good AK.
It really is. It's and also if you watch Clayco on YouTube, he did a couple interviews with that booth. The guy who's in charge of their QC, it looks like, is actually a guy who used to, before he was hired by the company, make he made AK parts kits, like hundreds of them in his garage. So the guy knows what he's doing. Um, and he's got a track record of this. And then pretty much everyone involved at the company right now does. So I hope they keep it up because that's, as far as I know, they have every Russian plan prior to like 2012, I want to say. Like they have all the packages for data production, um, which I know means those bastards could make an SVD, so they should do it. Just
Yeah.
because.
Does that mean Kalashnikov Concern is not sending them their new designs? Like, did they have a falling out? I know nothing about
They're
KUSA.
not
Uh,
they're see, it's tough because I don't think they're legally allowed to be involved. But the funny thing is that when the 103 first dropped, I watched the press coverage they did, and there was 100% people in the background of those videos, including the main PR guy for Kalashnikov Concern over in Russia. Um, so they are definitely buddy, but they're not legally allowed to be related to one another, um, or have anything to do right now with the Russian concern. So I guess yeah, you could pay for the most recent designs. I know that the Russians now have this like Mark 11 Mod 0 modification, kind of their own version of it. It's a SPD something or another. It's actually in the most recent Battlefield game. And the AK-19. Um, but yeah, if we ever see those stateside, someone did a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and got away with it. Um, but shit, if I was them right now, I'd probably focus more on the 100 series. I think that's what people like better, anyways, um, rather than risk it.
I
That's just
mean, yeah.
yep. That's my 2 cents. Um,
That's a pretty good segue since we're talking about Russia now. Segue
yeah,
into
Oh, yeah.
the other thing that they're doing.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, man. There's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tanaka, why don't you take it away on the Ukraine Russia front?
Sure. So over the last day or two, I've had time to go and do a deep dive on some of the stuff versus actions versus rhetoric. And again, I spent some time in it's been about 10 years now, but I spent some time in Siberia. Um, I think there's there's a lot here. There's a lot more than you're going to hear on any 5-minute news clip that most Americans are watching. And I'll try to break it down without going into the long, long history of everything that's going on here. Because I mean, we'll try to start without going all the way back to the Kievan Rus in 1300. Because that's really, if you really want to know about Russia and Ukraine, that's kind of where it starts. Um, basically, with the current situation now, what you kind of have is inflammatory actions versus inflammatory rhetoric. Everybody kind of knows what happened in 2014, and that situation has been sort of a slow, boil up until the current buildup. Um, and really, after looking at European news and Russian state media and American corporate media, really the most neutral stance you're going to find right now is Ukraine itself. You have the Zelensky government sort of calling for, hey, like tamp down the rhetoric. Mostly, the most inflammatory rhetoric really is coming from the United States. Is coming from the West, Washington, and London, um, for various interests. The inflammatory actions, on the other hand, are definitely coming from Russia. Over 100,000 troops on the Ukrainian border. And then not just in Russia either. You have massive troop and equipment buildups and exercises going on now in Belarus to the north of Ukraine. So, I mean, it's kind of there's goals on different side. I think what Russia is trying to accomplish with some of this is, it gives Putin a lot of what he wants as far as he wants they have some legitimate concerns as far as the massive NATO expansion eastward after the Cold War. And that, most of the rhetoric and the propaganda you hear in the United States is so they're trying to rebuild the old Soviet Union, and I don't think that's an accurate description of what's going on over there at all. I think he's more interested in Russian national sovereignty, maybe expanding the borders a little bit. It's much more. It is imperial and nationalist by design, but it's definitely not socialist. Belarus, of course, is sort of a puppet regime of Russia, but you have diplomats on all sides now saying nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to happen, and there is a possibility nothing happens. As far as the Ukrainian government calling for calm, I think that's sort of I don't think they have any other choice. When you have, the United States and the UK saying they're going to invade at any moment, they're going to invade at any moment. Um, if the Zelensky government didn't call for calm and not to panic, it would immediately call into question their legitimacy.
Yeah, and you
And
talk about rhetoric versus actions, right? They're still accepting shipments of arms. They're still accepting soldiers being stationed there from other nations and things like that. So
exactly, exactly. I think the largest contingency right now is the Brits. The Brits have the largest contingency of troops in Ukraine right now, training people. Of course, the British with the Western nation with the absolute longest history of unnecessary
fucking with other people.
war with other people. Yeah, exactly. Uh, so they're in there doing a lot of training. Most of the arms shipments, small arms shipments coming from like Czechoslovakia. The bigger arms shipments coming from the UK and the US. Russia has a couple of very very big sticks here. Because this is not post Cold War Europe that we're talking about now. During the Cold War, Eastern Europe, the USSR, the Soviet bloc, and Western Europe were not economically linked at all. That is certainly not the case now. Over a third of Western Europe, namely Germany, but it's not just Germany. Over a third of Western Europe's natural gas comes from Russia. Over half of their coal comes from Russia. You have the Nord Stream pipeline, which goes directly from Russia to Germany, which is completed but not activated um, yet. That is also in question here, and Russia can shut that all off instantaneously, and a third, Western Europe loses a third of their energy.
Yeah,
Which
and you can see who's concerned about it too, because talk about rhetoric versus actions again, right? It's the Germans are consistent on their rhetoric and actions of everyone please calm the fuck down, and it's
yes,
it's
yeah,
pretty
the
clear that it's
German
like they're
response
very worried about their oil because they're the only like
exactly.
non-nuclear nation, right?
Exactly. They've done a remarkable job, idiotically, of shutting down their nuclear, which the United States is absolutely no better in that regard. But that's an entirely different topic. But German Germany has been, fairly even-handed and quiet about all of this because, first of all, they have a new government since it is no longer the Merkel Reich over there. It is they have a new government and that hasn't really come out strongly on anything just because it's so new. They have blocked some shipments through their airspace of arms from, the Baltic states to the Ukraine. They definitely don't want to unnecessarily agitate Russia. They have the most to lose. They are the Western European country with the most to lose. They're also the Western European country with the largest economy. So it's not easy to stand on principle and just say, screw you. We're gonna shut off a third of our energy, half of our coal to our citizens in the winter. It's a very precarious situation that Germany in particular finds itself in. The United States, of course, we on the other side we have no economic links with either Ukraine or Russia. I mean, we do, but they are pretty much negligible. The imports
We care about Ukraine insofar as it gives NATO an extra 30 minutes, and
yes,
insofar
that's
as
really about it.
we would love for them to go to war because then we get to test all of our new shit against all the Russian new shit without us actually risking anyone. The same reason we love when Israel goes to war. It's like, hey, test our new shit, please.
Exactly. Yeah. The only thing that the only thing in the United States that has to gain from this would, be the military and defense contractors and things like that, which is about the same as, at the 20-year war in Afghanistan. The only people who got rich were the intelligence community and the defense contractors. It was an absolute waste. And again, going back to the history and things here, this is not like a cut and dry thing where, Ukraine wants to be an independent nation, Russia is agitating to annex them, and that's the end of the story. That's what Washington would like all Americans to believe and the Western Europeans to believe, but that is just simply not true. There is a substantial and significant portion of the Ukrainian population that is very Russian sympathetic, would have zero problems being in the Russian sphere of influence or under Russian rule, notably things in eastern Ukraine, um, which is why you have these Russian backed separatists. They are not, it's not some, to quote, to quote Trudeau, some small fringe minority. It is a substantial portion of the population. You have deep, deep ties between these two people, between the Russians, the Ukrainians, the Belarusians, people with family in each of them. The
Yeah,
western part of the country tends to be more pro-West post Cold War. The urban areas, of course, tend to be more pro-West towards the Cold War, but pretty much the entire eastern half of the country is pro-Russian and is zero issue with a lot of what's going on. So it
the
would
one thing.
immediately devolve. Anything
Yeah,
that happened over there would immediately devolve into a pretty nasty civil war, is what it would look like. And it's just not a cut and dry thing as Russia bad. It's not quite that simple.
the one I heard a Ukrainian politician, he was talking and he said something like, Kiev wants to make it clear to Moscow because Moscow made some comment about, oh, Ukraine is just our lost wayward sons, and
Yeah.
he was talking about how like that is just not true. Like, what is true is that like near the border, they do seem to think of each other more as like not another nation, but like a brother nation that just talk kind of funny because languages are pretty similar.
Incredibly similar. Yeah.
And so you have those border things where it's like pretty similar, and then you have your actual like seats of power saying things like, oh, you're our lost wayward son, or no, you're not our father, you're our rapist. Like that's actual rhetoric coming out of these places. So it's not going to be pretty, and you got
No, it's
war
not.
hawks in the United States who just think it's funny.
Yeah, exactly. That's my. I guess if I had the biggest gripe, it would be with literal warhawk boomers in the United States. The United States as a nation, just for our own economic domestic purposes and interests, has zero reason to care about anything going on, especially here. We have far more bigger problems in other parts of the world and domestically to worry about than this. This is warhawk boomer posturing at its worst, just sort of trying to demonize Russia like they did 30 or 40 years ago. It's beyond ridiculous and infuriating.
But
Uh,
fuck, it's fun.
that's what I'm saying from an accelerationist standpoint. This is fantastic. But again, back to what you were saying though, Crimea was only ceded to Ukraine as late as I think the 50s. So it's not like there's a long, long history here of Ukrainian independence. It's just not a thing. And so yeah, like I say, the country is fairly, I wouldn't say evenly split, but it's definitely probably like a 60-40 split between pro-Russia, pro-West. If Russia wanted to move militarily, from a purely tactical militarily standpoint, if Russia, with the amount of troops and equipment that they have, they could move and take over eastern Ukraine clear to the Dnieper River in a matter of days. They probably would immediately get bogged down in a guerrilla war in urban areas. They could easily sort of just surround Kiev and cut it off without having to actually, go in and occupy it, especially since Kiev, for most intents and purposes, is surrounded with the massive troop buildup north of them on the Belarusian border, which of course, Lukashenko in Belarus is going to do, whatever Russia says. France, yeah, Macron and Putin talked, I believe it was yesterday, for several hours. And again, I don't see that as being particularly significant, other than, yeah, France wants to test out some of their new military equipment that they've spent the last several years building up. They've invested a lot of money in their military. However, as far as the diplomatic stick, France's economy, they are still not the big dog in the European Union. Um, and it's highly politically motivated. Macron is facing some serious right wing opponents, several of them. He may still yet win, but he's up for election in 3 months over there. And so all this seems is just a way to, for him to posture himself as some sort of diplomatic, force while he's up for election. And I don't see it as being particularly relevant or significant compared to the real talks are between the US and Moscow. And as long as they're talking, I don't think anything is going to happen. There's a lot of things saying that, Putin's already sort of gotten what he wanted as far as having, now he has a massive military buffer zone on his western border between that and a NATO state. I don't think whatever I don't think Ukraine is immediately going to join NATO. They want, these clear-cut guarantees that it will never join NATO. I mean, for all intents and purposes, other than military reasons, there is absolutely no reason it should join NATO. Um, you could call into question the efficacy of NATO as an organization itself post Cold War. So I mean, and then of course what the real issue here is to me always with a lot of these issues is China. China has flatly sided with Russia and told the U.S. this as much, and that made almost no news domestically. It made some international news, and of course, it depends on where you're getting your information from. But China has flatly sided with Russia over their particular security demands and told the U.S. that it shouldn't inflame the situation. They accused the U.S. of interfering and with the Beijing Winter Olympics, and so yeah, that's the real issue there. Is that China, no matter what happens, almost China benefits, which is ultimately again bad for the United States.
I think one of the most important things to remember, because you sort of touched on it, and a lot of like what Russia is doing, at least as like their posturing and stuff like that, it seems to be coming directly from Putin's mouth, and people seem to forget that the reason this feels like a weird Cold War type of move is because Putin was a Cold War spook. Like
Yeah,
he's not a stupid dude, and anything that
no, he's
feels like a Cold War move, well, there's a reason for that.
oh no, absolutely. And another thing I think people miss too is that you know, especially in the United States, Western Europe, Western countries, it's easy to portray Putin as a spook, a tyrant, this is sort of a post-communist boogeyman. That is not how Russians see him at all. And you hear all these stories about, oh, these people are oppressed, these people are oppressed. These are distinct minorities within Russia itself. when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 and took over the Donbass and Crimea, Putin's approval rating from neutral standpoints. This is not from Russian state media. This is from, several years after the fact documented. Putin's approval rating went up to like 85% inside his country. And this goes back to the historical perspective of Russia and the Slavic peoples as a whole. The vast majority of their history, these people have endured levels of privation that haven't been seen in the Western world in over 100 years. And that is their history. It is suffering, it is hardship, it is privation, it is. And post post Yeltsin, after the Soviet Union fell, there was like a 10-year period of utter and absolute lawlessness and chaos. And it is Putin who ended that. And so literally under Putin, the Russian people as a whole and Slavic people within that sphere of influence have never had it so good, ever, in their entire history, going back to whenever you want to go back to. Nobody over there is starving to death. Nobody over there is getting bombed. Their cities aren't being trashed. They're not being run by unorganized criminals. You could argue that the criminals organized into an oligarchy and now run the government, which is pretty much what all governments are anyway. But a Russian can go to the grocery store, find shelves full, go home to a heated home and eat, and they have literally never had it so good. And so they are not interested in any sort of outside foreign, interference saying, "Oh, look how bad you have it," because they have a much different sense of history than any Western country does. Just
Yeah,
because they've had it so bad for so long, and they have it so good now compared to literally any other time in their history. And that's not
if you want to
something
think about like 1984, right? Like the book, not like the general idea that people seem to have about it, because they have the wrong idea. And I will talk
Oh yeah.
about this until people tell me to shut the fuck up, because I talk about this all
Shut
the
the
time.
fuck up.
Shut up. Uh,
Show's
the
over.
point of
That's
the
it.
book,
See you later.
yeah, the point of the book was like if governments are able to provide food and at least a propagandized feeling of safety, people will
Yeah.
do whatever they want, right? Like that's the nuts and bolts of the book. Is you don't have to worry about like people kicking down your doors and everything else. You have to worry about people signing up for that shit, because they will sign up for that if they have food and feeling of safety.
Yeah, and they definitely have that, and they still have they are not, the Russian people as a whole are not an oppressed people. I mean, if you just take it back to all of our particular pet issue, the Second Amendment, and the ridiculous gun laws in the United States, suppressors are required over there, and as a result, suppressors
Not
are
anymore.
cheap over there.
Not
They're
anymore.
still much cheaper. They're not required anymore
They're banned now. Actually, it's a
in
very
Russia.
recent thing.
Suppressors.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Then that's very recent news. I apologize for being mistaken, but up until then, they were very cheap. I mean, like significantly cheaper than anything you could get over here. But I mean, I spent a great deal of time, like I was over there for over a month and not in Moscow or St. Petersburg either, in the western part of the country. I was in Novosibirsk and Ekaterinburg in the eastern part of the country. Novosibirsk is about 200 miles north of Kazakhstan, and of course, Ekaterinburg is where the communists murdered the Romanov when they were exiled. You did not get a sense. It is very different from over here, but you did not get a sense of people being afraid to go out and about or anything like that. If anything, it was much more like the crazy Russian driver YouTube videos. It was closer to that than it was to some sort of authoritarian comm block hellhole. They had traffic checkpoints. I was stopped at once. They heard me speak English, and they just sort of rolled their eyes and waved you on through. Like there was not some sort of anti-Western anything like that. I just feel in general Americans have a very distorted misperception of the Russian culture as a whole. And again, of course, governments are not as representative of their people any more than our government is representative of our people and culture. It's that part's very similar. And you saw a lot of pretty much anybody over there under 30 loved any and all things Western. I was over there as to do work for a Western company that was specifically focused on service and entertainment. And I mean, the places I went to were packed all the time. And outwardly, Russians are very sort of buttoned down, closeted, quiet people. But once you got like inside any venue with them, I mean, it was just like partying with anybody else. And so again, I would say, and of course there's, Russian state propaganda too. With the Russian state media is sort of portraying this entire situation as we're not going to do anything, we're protecting ourselves, and Ukraine is taking this aggressive stance. Which again, on the eastern side of the country, there's probably just enough of a grain of truth in that due to the last 8 years of conflict between the two for them to sell that. Now, it's not entirely true, of course. Again, you have the massive Russian military buildup as sort of aggressive actions versus aggressive rhetoric. But the aggressive propaganda, I just, if there's anything for anybody here to take away from this, is that our news media isn't any more trustworthy than their state media. It's just not.
Since we are a gun show, just real quick, what gun control got updated to it looks like 2015, maybe? Suppressors are prohibited, 10-round mag limits, no more than 10 guns, 5 of them shotguns, 5 of them rifles.
Yeah, and I think you do have to get a special permit for a pistol. I think you don't need the permit for this pistol that shoots. It doesn't shoot like copper jacketed bullets. It's like literally like rubber bullets.
Steel core
However,
rubber bullets.
yeah, they're not soft rubber bullets. Yes, they're steel core. Yeah, so there is actual. They can penetrate. Not from longer distances, of course, but I have seen some tests with those at
Yeah.
10 yards in, and they still penetrate.
They've got that pistol
but
law
yeah,
that Italy has where they can't own anything that is chambered in an issued cartridge by a military.
right.
They
All
use
right.
I think it's 366. It's like 366 TKM or something.
Yeah, they use
Uh,
weird shit like that.
yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Italy, I'm glad you brought that up. Going to more, this may all be posturing and standing up. There have been a slew of Italian businessmen who have had some corporate meetings in Russia as recently as, I believe, 24 to 48 hours ago. And so that sort of goes to the stance of one, the NATO countries being split on this particular issue because of the strong economic ties between East and West. And two, the Italians have always sort of done their own thing as far as European alliances anyway, and always had sort of a soft spot towards Russia in general. But if things were as serious as, as some media outlets would have you believe, some of that stuff would definitely not be going on. And again, it's just some of the stuff is still going to be business as usual. But it is sort of an unprecedented situation, and looking at things as they were only gets you so far.
While we're sort of on it, by the way, we've been talking about this, I looked through on Wikipedia a list of small arms adopted by the Ukrainians. And yeah, suffice to say, there's a lot of external interest here. They are using, so it looks like their primary standard issues are all still Russian based. So using AK-74s, AKS-74Us, AKMS, SKS, SVDs, RPKs. But in the mix here, there's a couple of oddballs. Specifically from, it looks like Fort, their factory designations are like Fort something. So they have there's weird things here. There's a Fort 14 TP, which is like a weird mix between Beretta and a CZ75, and I'll put these all on in chat and on the video. There is here's the 14. They're using a a Tavor that's been chambered in 9mm, and has a weird proprietary magnifier for special forces. for some reason. They are using, and this is the freaking killer. Um, they're they're looking at adopting. It's just a straight up like, it looks like it's just a straight up Ruger, like M4, but chambered in 7.62 with a like looking seemingly proprietary magazine. This thing looks jank.
It looks like they've also got some licensed M4s, licensed javelins, like things like that too. That maybe they're so like specials guys are using. The Wikipedia table is very very detailed.
Yeah, they got some Barretts in there.
In the last interview I saw, especially regarding the Brits, it was the Brits training in like damn near the Polish border, so about as far west in the country as you can get. It was the British training Ukrainian anti-tank crews with the javelins that had been supplied by the United States.
Yeah,
someone in the
and
Pentagon.
the laws, what are the new laws called? M laws.
Oh, they have those in here. M141 BDM.
Yeah.
It's actually, it looks like a small derivative actually.
And
Small
for
D
bunker
disposable.
defeating munition.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Small D variants. Someone at the Pentagon is watching these guys with javelins along the border and hoping the Soviets, or not, well, almost the Soviets, roll up with like some of the latest like T-14s. Just to like, that's a new one, right? The Russians adopted a like T-14, I think it is, which is their T-90 replacement. I don't know pretty much anything about it. I know it's kind of an Abrams ripoff. But someone's watching with vested interest to see how a javelin stacks up against that. What else here?
I'm really interested in seeing how their Stinger is going to stack up against whatever Russian aircraft come up overboard.
Yeah, we just sent them a bunch of stingers too, apparently.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's
Hopefully
an
Stinger-
unspecified amount of dual mount Stinger modification missiles that got sent there by Latvia and Lithuania of all places.
Yeah.
The Soviets picked a weird designation for their anti-tank wire-guided missile. I just posted it in.
Look at this stinger configuration too. This is the one that he's talking about.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
That is
That's
bizarre.
so-
It's
that's goofy. But damn,
It's a seated platform. That's just nuts, man.
it's
I
not
mean,
manpad anymore.
No.
no, that's
still,
clearly intended as static AA.
yeah. So what that really is just like a small little, not really hasty, but it's more deliberate of a. Instead of doing like an Avenger system there, which is the Humvee mounted with Stingers, you can now have this set into like right next to a trench system or any kind of small little area they're trying to defend.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's space saving essentially.
you got all this like shit flying around in battle, and meanwhile, there's this one guy kind of like 30 feet to the right. He's just like sitting in his chair looking through this thing. Like, God, I hope I don't get shot. Everyone's looking at me.
That's wild.
Yeah, they've got some weird armaments here. And then, I mean, looks like
have you seen the WAC 47?
What?
The
Oh, yeah, the
M4
AR.
WAC
Yeah.
47 is a 7.62-39 AR.
Yeah, that thing looks like something that PSA makes.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the CMMG Mutant. That's what
It
that
is,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
With an
freaking-
underbarrel
there's-
grenade launcher, of course.
Right.
Oh yeah.
There's kind of a surprising amount of Israeli arms in here.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Including
guess
DMR.
Israel knew that this would be the testing ground for the 21st century.
Just like we used to use Israel to test all of our guns. Now it's like, okay, they're gonna use Ukraine.
They
Yeah,
got
you know.
too.
It's the
It's really good
circle of life.
that, as far as you're talking about like consequences, the U.S. has already pretty much pledged that they're not going to send massive forces in there mostly because that would be extremely unpopular politically at home. The sanctions, that doesn't mean, of course, that they won't send anybody in there. It just means they won't tell anybody. Um, what as far as the sanctions go, they could get very strict on Russia as far as cutting them off from like the international SWIFT payment system and things like that. However, uh, they have already, China has already said that they would sort of make up for that. It wouldn't happen immediately, but that's the biggest cog in the thing is that Russia has a very big stick to wield against Western Europe, and all the sticks that the West has to throw against Russia is are threatened to be quickly replaced by China, and that's the biggest problem and issue with the Russia China partnership is that China swiftly becoming the world's most powerful economy is now allied with Russia, which could negate many of the economic consequences the West could impose. Not immediately, but in the medium to long term. And I think overall that tends to be the strategy that you sort of see from the East in general, is that they tend to take a much more long-term strategic goal when they take these kind of actions. Whereas, of course, domestically, the U.S. government, and maybe not quite so much the military, but definitely the government at almost every level, can't seem to think past the next election cycle, and everything they do is a short-term political gain, which is long-term a very, very bad way to formulate strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, would you believe me if I told you that there are Ukrainian tanks? I just pulled up a picture that have the like Gopnik Adidas racing stripe on them.
I would believe that in a heartbeat, but I still want to see the pictures.
Yeah, there it is.
Amazing.
That is
It's
amazing.
incredible.
Actually, I think that's self-propelled artillery.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
You fucking
That's
peasant.
amazing.
Yeah, look how far up the barrel can tilt.
That is
That's a
amazing.
good point.
Yeah, get fucking dabbed on, you filthy fucking casual.
I already like the Slav war better than the.
I don't really care what it is. I don't carry anti self-propelled howitzer munitions. I carry anti-tank rockets and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it all looks the same. It all blows up the same.
It all
Actually,
blows
go
up,
AFK
yeah.
for a minute or two here, guys. My lunch is getting here.
Get it.
Okay, this is probably a pretty good place to wrap up this episode. But yeah, no, Ukraine. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot of the interests, the vested interests, are from not exactly from the parties you'd expect. Um, but yeah, there's some. I don't know why Israel. My biggest takeaway, besides Narc's excellent breakdown here, is why Israel would send them a bunch of 9mm converted Tavors with a magnifier and with a hollow in a weird spot. But you know what? It's we'll probably see in about a week's time how these things pan out.
If something's gonna happen, it's gonna happen in February. That's my biggest take. If something actually is gonna kick off, it's gonna happen in February, post or after. I think China has asked Russia to not disrupt the Beijing Olympics. However, the last time the Beijing had the Summer Olympics, that was when the Georgian invasion kicked off. And I don't think Russia actually started that, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
Last
Yeah, I
comment
think
on adopted stuff. Why are they still using 9x18? They've got Makarovs, and their new gun that they're adopting is 9x18. That's bothering me. I had to say that before.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up.
They're this is a weird mix of like a CZ and a Beretta for these handguns, including the new one, which is like a PBX looking thing, but also not really. Yeah, but I mean, there's clear influence there. This episode's been like all weird guns, adopted by different
Weird.
countries.
It's weird times, man. Weird times.
Yeah, so the Olympics end February 20th, last I checked. So yeah, February 21st, the Russians roll into Ukraine. So,
I'll be here.
Big pool on.
well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back. God, I'm not going to assign a schedule to this at this point because it's just going to be all over the place. But we'll probably be back at some point. Maybe next time, like during a nuclear hellstorm. But regardless, we'll be back at some point. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.